I am glad to be with you all. Funny story, I am actually on PTO. And so I was telling one of the program managers backstage, it's like, oh my God, I forgot all about my chat when I booked my PTO, but I've been around for a few of the other events. So I hope you all have enjoyed the summit so far. So I will share my screen so that you all can see the chat. Otherwise, it's not really a presentation, is it? Um, I hope you all can see my screen well. You should be able to see it. Cool. Um, I will start by giving a little bit more of a deep intro to who I am. Not a bunch more, but a little bit more context into me, what I do, where I work, and what this chat will be all about. So as Ilker said, I am the community manager at Loop, formerly Loop Returns, but we just go by Loop now because it's cool and hip. We are an exchange first platform for Shopify brands. So when you go and you have to return an order online, you want to use something other than emailing the customer experience or customer service reps. And so we provide a platform for Shopify brands. So we've got a community of over 750 brands, all on Shopify, all around. Someone shouted out ATL. Oh, Danny. Hey, Danny. All from Shopify. And so a few brands you might know: Allbirds, Skims, Chubbies, Figs. Chubbies and Allbirds just had and Figs had some really big announcements this year and the last 2 quarters or so. So that's all great. So I'll jump in with this slide that I should have started off with. So now you know who I am. You can follow along if you all want to follow along with the chat and post notes, or if there's anything that I say that you might find interesting, feel free to hashtag CMX Summit Rise. Tag me on Twitter at Darien Payton. It'll be a pretty easygoing chat. I'll try to keep an eye here on the chat. I'm first going to call off some of the cities that I see here, some cities and states, countries even. Okay, I see Madison. Hi, Brett. Amanda. Hi. Jenny. Hi. Kenneth. Hi. Laura. Sacramento. Nice. I hope the weather's well there. Providence, Rhode Island. I've been hearing a lot about Providence and Rhode Island in general. Heard it's a great vacation spot. Scottsdale. Hi. San Diego, hi. Sao Paulo, Brazil, hi. Melbourne, Phoenix, Raleigh, Oregon, Vancouver Island, Canada. A lot of Canada friends working with Shopify. So hi, Kate. Brazil, New York City, Mumbai, India, Bay Area, Ottawa, again, Canada, Lithuania, nice. DC, hey, DC. That is my dream city if I ever left Chicago, which is where I am. I know my hat says Atlanta, but I'm in Chicago. Okay. My talk will be all going off on my own little rants here. But I did want to start off with another icebreaker. Everyone's dropping their city. Nicole, Chi-Town is the best. Very underrated city, by the way. Everyone's dropping their city, but here's my first question. What show are you currently binge watching? I have to know because I don't watch enough TV. There are too many shows out there on Netflix, and I have everything. I have Netflix, HBO Max, Disney, and Hulu, and I just don't know what to watch. So I need suggestions. This is really a selfish endeavor here. Okay. Ted Lasso, The Sopranos, Detroiters, Clickbait. I heard about that. Ted Lasso, I'm hearing a lot about on Twitter, so I should check it out. Yellowstone. DC is lit. Doom Patrol. Motel Makeover. That sounds great for when I need to decompress from work. Disney Plus. Yes, I'm basically a kid because I watch Disney Plus all the time. When they first came out with the Imagineering documentary, I was definitely into it. Sorry, this is so not my presentation today, but really fun. I'm getting some Superman and Lois, American Horror Story. I should watch that. I know it was really popular a few years ago. I should probably pick that up. Ted Lasso. Hearing a lot about that. Modern Family, Ted Lasso, yeah. Sword art online, anime, nice. Some diversity with the anime suggestions. Okay, that is currently the binge watching, which is not my conversation today. But thanks for all of the suggestions. I now have some shows to watch for the rest of my vacation while I'm off. Thank you all very much. But let's jump into the chat. So today you'll walk away with a few things: how to generate content ideas, how to create a content engine, which is not exactly the same thing. And then I'll talk a little bit about how to use content to build deeper relationships and connections with your audience and form a community. So this conversation might be more appropriately called building a community through social media, as every community is built through content in one way or another, whether that's virtual events or something else. Or maybe it's chats in whatever community platform you might be using. So everyone uses content in one way or another, but this will be more geared towards social media. So I'll talk about that. I picked B2B because B2B seems to be one of those areas or industry sectors where it seems a little harder to build community, but hopefully I can help dispel that myth and help you figure out some actionable tips or give out some actionable tips for building your community. All right, so let us jump in. So I want to start off with this. This is kind of the overview of the chat. So here's you. This dot represents you or your brand, whichever you prefer. This is you, your brand, sharing thoughts on a topic that you are passionate about. But it's really just you. It's really just you talking to no one or everyone in a way, but really no one. There's no one you're having a direct conversation with. So that's what this dot represents. And in the beginning, when you're first trying to build a community, when you're first creating content to kind of engage and attract a community, this is what it looks like. And you might be stuck in this phase for a while. But over time, you'll find that someone comes along that's interested in your topic, whatever that is. For us at Loop, it's retention and e-commerce, but it may be something totally different for you. So eventually, after a while, you create enough content, you say the right things, maybe get in the right circles, join the right groups, follow along with the right hashtags if you're on LinkedIn, and someone becomes interested in the topic you're talking about. Maybe they're also in the field they are around. Over time, they'll bring along a few folks that they think are interested. Maybe they're tagging other people or DMing and sharing your content to other folks who are interested in what you're talking about. Or maybe they bring it up in a conversation and then their friends or their colleagues start to follow you or something of that nature. Eventually, they tell more people and the people multiply, and you begin to form this audience of folks who are interested in your community. And this is really just an overview of what content does in helping you build a community. It helps you build this audience where you start off in a bit of a void and a silo, away from the rest of people who are interested in your topic, or away from the rest of your prospective community members. And then over time, you put out content and you attract people who are interested in your content, people who want to know more about what you're talking about, people who want to know more about the topic. So maybe for us, e-commerce, returns, retention, people who want to know more. Right now, we are dealing with iOS 14 and 15 and privacy updates and Facebook ads and rising. There are a lot of things happening in the e-commerce community. There's shipping and logistics with the pandemic, all types of issues. And so people are trying to figure out answers. They're trying to find solutions to their problems. So this is what content eventually helps you do. You go from being a lone person to building a group of folks who are all interested in learning about your content or learning about your topic, sorry. And this goes to say that when you're building a B2B community and you're building a community at all, wherever it is, if it's B2B or B2C, community is really built through conversations. And you all, I assume, already know that. That's why you're at CMX Summit. You already know that. But in a B2B space, the most interesting thing that I find is that it feels like most B2B community managers or builders aren't always, or I'll talk about me. I won't talk about you. Won't project on you. Let me talk about me. I don't always remember that it's just about conversations. It's just about getting to know other people. It's just about taking time to learn and build a relationship with someone else. So what I've decided to teach myself and kind of reframe this thought is all companies are B2C. There's no B2B, no B2C, no, everyone is talking to their end consumer. So if you are B2B, maybe this is a little bit clunkier, but maybe you're B2B to C. If you add that C at the end, you're business to consumer. What does that really mean? At the end of the day, you're always talking to people. If you're a software company, if you're a services company, if you're a professionals firm, if whatever it is that you do, at the end of the day, the person that receives the benefit from your services or the person that receives the benefit from your services, your product, your software, whatever it is, they're people. So you're always talking to people. And the way to build the community is through genuine relationships with people. So this is kind of the overset and kind of trying to bust through a few myths first on what B2B community building is like. It's no different than building any other community. It's no different than B2C or anything else. At the end of the day, we're all talking to people. It all requires a people humanity first approach. So the purpose of your content is to actually build that community. So if you think of your content like a funnel, and this is kind of the social media, the marketing person coming out in me, that spreads like fleas. This is kind of the marketer, the social media person coming out in me. There's a funnel that you can kind of build with your content. And I showed on a few slides before, the purpose of your content is to get people from just being you, your community from just being you, to eventually being a group of people that you're talking to, that you're kind of engaging with, people who share a similar, singular maybe, social identity. These are folks that all agree about a specific worldview, right? So your goal is really to attract people who care about the same topic as your company. So I'll talk about building a content engine. And the first thing to mention here is you want to start off with a single piece of content. So you might want to call this your content pillar. I like to recommend video for most people. So if it's just a video series or maybe a video podcast or something like that, just because it's most extensible. And you start off with that. And eventually what you want to do is you distribute your pillar content into multiple formats. So we'll talk a little bit about that, how to go through those different formats, and eventually take your community from intro level, where they maybe don't really know about you. They're finding you, they're browsing around at the top of, or just browsing through their news feed, see something that makes them stop, click, watch, or read, and then eventually get to a point where they're having one-on-one conversations with other people in the community. So let's talk about this funnel. You've got a podcast and or a blog at the top. You've got organic social, and you've got events. I've already mentioned you want to start off with something like a podcast or blog, preferably video, as it enables you to kind of split it up a little bit more. It's most extensible. And you want to distribute your pillar content into multiple formats. So maybe you take the video and you turn it into a blog. Maybe you take the blog and turn it into a tweet thread. Maybe you're creating a thread and turning it into singular tweets, or pulling out little sayings or things that you can talk about there. Small little pithy words of advice, or people call it fortune cookie, but whatever you want to call it. You're taking this content and you're finding ways to push your message out. That's really the purpose of the content engine. How do you create one piece of content and push your message out so that people have a time to absorb the message, people have time to become acquainted with your brand, And they also have time to form an opinion on the message. With all of the information that exists today, it's kind of hard to form an opinion or an affinity to a brand or interest in a topic if you only see it one time. So by building a content engine, what you're doing is you're enabling yourself, your company, to kind of build mind share with other people who are interested. So for Loop, by talking about returns, by talking about retention or e-commerce, what we're doing is we're building mind share so that people across different brands are able to are able to see our content, are able to build an affinity with what we're talking about. They're able to build affinity with the topic of returns, the topic of retention, and then eventually build affinity with the brand. Okay, that's a bit much there. I spent a little time there. Let us talk about generating content ideas. So there are a lot of ways to generate content ideas. I figured that for me, again, I won't talk about you. Let me talk about me. Generating content ideas is probably the hardest part. And my best singular, probably most quotable piece of advice is have more conversations with your customers, more conversations with your team, more conversations even with yourself. If you're like me, you might spend quite a bit of time talking to yourself. Working from home, there's not a lot of people around. I live alone. So maybe you're having conversations with yourself. Maybe you're having conversations with, or just thinking, maybe you're talking, going on a walk or in a shower, talking to yourself. I do that sometimes. A little weird when people come around. They're like, why are you talking to yourself? I talk to my dog. Yes, great. Dogs always like to listen to us. So that works perfectly. And it's a little less weird than talking to yourself in a shower. So getting content ideas. Maybe you want to do that through looking through your demos, having one-on-one chats, remix content that you already like, or maybe you're just asking questions. This is kind of a overlooked way to generate content ideas. Ask questions about things that you're trying to figure out. I'll show you an example of this content engine in action with Loop. So we had a podcast, The Exchange. You can or cannot subscribe. That's not the point. The Exchange, we had a brand on that talked about Manscaped. You may or may not have heard of them. They were talking about growing their organic social following. Cool. Took that content, made it into a social clip. So that's what you see here. You see the content going from here to a social clip, the podcast. Took the podcast and made it into a singular post. So I want to break down what's happening right here. We're interviewing an expert in e-commerce. The podcast clip gets turned into social, and here's where the magic happens. Here's where the conversations really start. We take the podcast clip that we created for social and we start creating spin-off posts. This is where things start to get interesting when you're creating content for your community. This got a few thousand at the time. This is way older than 2 weeks, by the way. This is a few months old, I think. I just clipped it a while, or I guess a few months ago when it first came out. But this has got thousands of impressions at the time where I had very few followers or very few connections on LinkedIn. But what I was able to do was attract someone, Alex McEachran, right? And Alex and I talked about social, and we talked about how Manscaped built an actual community of 14,000 people at the time that were interested in their products. And so what am I doing here? I am actually starting a one-on-one conversation with someone who's interested in e-commerce, someone who is interested in retention, and someone who's interested in social media and all of the other things that we're talking about. This conversation eventually leads to Alex and I having a conversation. He tagged Tyler Wentworth, who was the guest. Tyler talks about, he brings in someone else. And eventually what happens is the conversation goes from that to maybe we should do a case study. So what we learn in creating this content is that sometimes when you create content for attracting your part of your audience, you actually end up with more content ideas. I talked to my Tyler. You end up with more content ideas. And in the end, once you have people engaged with your content enough, you find out who's a good candidate for your private community. So Alex eventually becomes a member of our private community. He eventually becomes someone that we invite. We talk deeper about retention with. We talk a little bit more about e-commerce, building a community for a B2C brand and D2C brands and things like that, which is really what our topic is about. So we go from talking in a void, having a singular post, breaking down that content from the podcast all the way to, and this is a little fast, so I'll stop a little early to maybe answer some tactical questions. We go from having a podcast to breaking it down to singular pieces so that we can get to this final point. And this is the real key here. How do we get from a singular piece of content to having a direct conversation with someone here so that we're able to invite them to the community, get to know them better, build a relationship with them, and become friends, build an affinity for the brand, for the business. That is really it's not all of that complicated, which is kind of why I went a little bit faster and talked through some of this tactical things. Most of this isn't really complicated. It's some of the same things I'm sure most of you are doing. But in the B2B world, it seems so odd. It seems so weird to do, but it's pretty simple there. So I'll stop here. I will stop sharing for one, and I will take on a few questions, or let Ilker decide how this should go.
Oh, definitely. Well, I'll let you decide on how it should go. So certainly, it's been an absolute pleasure. And people have been, holding off until the last minute probably to put some questions in. So it's first of all, thank you. It's been really, really cool to listen to you, and definitely some fantastic stuff there, and it resonated very, very well with our audience. And there's been so much engagement and so many, acceptances to what you were saying. So very, very cool. So we have some questions coming in. So, right, Jenny's asking, the first one that appeared, how do you combat in yourself the thought that you've already done that, so you dismiss it / assume everyone knows and encourage yourself to repeat yourself? Did that make sense?
Yes. So if I'm understanding correctly, maybe you've already put out content and you don't want to seem repetitive. You don't want to seem like, or maybe you feel like I've talked about this topic enough, or I've done this enough. How do you keep going? The way that I combat, if I understand that correctly, Jenny, let me know if I got that right. Okay. The way that I combat that is I realize there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, literally millions, and there's probably billions. I probably need to update my stats. Pieces of content being created on the internet every day. And even in your circles, consider how much you might see browsing randomly through the internet. A lot of content. So the way that I see it, I'm just adding another thought. And I never take for granted that people are always having me in the back of their mind, or they're thinking about me a lot. One of the things I had to tell myself is, Darien, you're a cool kid. You're not really that important. People have their own lives. So sometimes they're thinking about other stuff, and maybe they don't really remember what you're talking about. Or maybe they do remember, and they haven't thought about it in a while, and they need a refresher. Or maybe there's just this moment where you put out a piece of content and it's a light bulb moment. There's sometimes where I see something and I've heard it a billion, just randomly one day clicks. So I guess the short answer to that is I always remember that there's more room for enough, and just safely assume that people are busy. People are doing a lot. They're seeing a lot of information, reading a lot of information, trying to take it all in. And so they don't always remember.
I think we've got time just to squeeze in one more question. So in the interest of being fair, let's see what's the most upvoted one. So Paolo Johnson's asking, if you're a community manager, team of one, how would you suggest crowdsourcing content?
Oh, great. This is where the questions come in handy. So one of the things that I do, if I have a topic about retention, Maybe I have a topic about community. Let me relate it to this. If I want to know what's the best community tool, this is a question that I have for myself. What's the best community tool? I will ask that question on LinkedIn or Twitter. And what I'll get back is responses from a bunch of people who are also trying to figure it out or who have thought about the question themselves. And what that helps me do is actually build content to go off of. So maybe with all of those answers, I create a roundup piece of content that includes all of the tools I got. Or maybe I am doing a piece of content of me reviewing all of those tools. So the short answer is, if you're looking for a way to crowdsource and it's only one person, ask questions. Start asking for opinions from other people and see what they give you back. So that way you stimulate conversation, and eventually you can pull out pieces of content from there. I hope that answers the question.
Well, thank you very much for that answer. And that actually brings us to the end of our conversation here, because we've sort of run out of time. I would have really wished to have a more extended time with you, but we just don't have it for the purposes of this conference. Darien, that's been an absolute pleasure having you here. Thank you very much, and I will really look forward to seeing you in other chats, in other sessions, in future events as well. So thanks everyone for attending. And the final session of the day in this stage is going to get underway in the next minute or so. So just jumping off over there, and thank you for all your questions, for all the engagement. It's been lovely. Please make sure that you use CMX Summit Rise as the official hashtag when you're sharing anything that you've learned from Darien. Thank you very much, and all the very best to everyone. So just jumping off now. All the best.
See ya.